everyone, welcome to the beautiful mountain of Suilven. Fantastic day again, although very, very windy. We had a bad day yesterday. The wind was just blowing a gale. There's no chance of doing any painting yesterday, but we had a nice day anyway, driving right to the very top of Scotland. Lovely beach, which I would have liked to have painted, but it was just too windy. I couldn't do it. So I thought today would be a bit of a blowout as well today. But luckily we found a slightly sheltered. There's a big rock behind us which is sheltering us from the wind a bit. But we have this lovely view here, and I've done a little sketch of how I'm going to do that. There's my little drawing of the scene in front of me. So what attracted me to the scene were these trees on the left going up the hill, and they felt that it was going into the scene a bit, and of course the massive mountains behind of Suilven and the white house on the right here, which I thought was nice. So I've sort of pushed things together a bit, as again I'm going to start off with the sky, a bit of ultramarine, no not ultramarine, cobalt blue, the sky, and we have some clouds in there today, so I'm going to try and depict some clouds, a bit of brown in there. Okay, that's quite a lot of paint on it. Mix it up carefully. Great. Okay, so very bright in this top. Not quite so bright. Great. I'm going to try and introduce a few clouds into this. So just let the brown, some little bit of burnt umber come into the painting, just a hint of a moody cloud. Maybe leave a few white patches because the clouds have a bright side to them, so we try and leave that, and then introduce a darker side underneath, maybe a bit of burnt umber. There we go. Just to give them a little bit of texture. And a bit of raw sienna might help it a bit. Going down to the lighter part of the sky, add a bit of viridian. Remember the sky, as it gets more towards the horizon, picks up a little bit of green in it. Great. See how the flecks of light, the flecks of untouched paint bring out the lightness in the clouds. So sometimes with painting it's what you don't paint which is important, and what you leave out. I find that an interesting challenge. You don't have to paint everything. Sometimes leaving a bit of white leaves a wonderful highlight. Great. It's quite an interesting sky. So see, that's just one layer there. Now we'll head into the mountains. Earlier it had a very dark feeling about it, which I liked. I like that moodiness, which is gone at the moment, but I'm going to try and remember it and place that on. Great, so again the ultramarine, and trying to get some interesting tones on the mountains. A bit of red, burnt umber maybe, burnt sienna. Creating a moody background. That's what I'm trying to get for this picture. Great. I think that's worked well. So I'm going to start painting the foreground now. I've painted the hills, the first layer anyway, just to indicate where they are, and I've really just splashed them on. No real care taken. That's the way I like to paint watercolour. Not carefully. I don't want to be a careful painter, because you end up having a rod for your back and you never finish a painting. So try and attack it with vigour, as much vigour as you can muster. Okay, so I've got the background done. There's some hills here. There's a bit of, I need to soak that up a little bit, otherwise it's going to go into the next wash. Add a little bit of burnt umber to the blue, because the hills are quite brown there. And see the way that the paint mixes on the paper. That's one of the fun things about watercolour. You're not always trying to mix things in the palette. You're trying to mix things on the paper as well. And see how the washes take and see how things mix together. So there is a little bit of out of control nature with watercolour, which is what to me makes it exciting. If it was all controlled and all I knew exactly what was going to happen, it wouldn't make it quite so interesting. But these happy accidents is what I call them, that you have to have the ability to recognise that that's a nice thing, that's a good thing to happen, these accidents. So try not to worry if you make a mistake. So you see the hills come, the brown hills in the distance. Okay, down there. Getting a bit lighter. There's actually a river that comes in here, which I'll try and leave. Try and get a little bit of green grass coming on. Right, just laying in more and more of the washes. Again, it's like the painting I did a couple of days ago of the stack. Washing downwards, so you put a wash in and then underneath it comes in the next wash, so they fuse together. Once it's dry, it will never make a clean wash. So coming down and down the picture. Maybe that blue will be a shadow of the sky scudding across. And put a little bit of green next to it. It's quite an enjoyable phase of the painting, really, because you're really just slopping it down, which isn't really what many watercolourists do. They have a care, which I try not to have. Very careful with how they put each wash down. And towards the bottom. Again, this is my biggest brush, my large squirrel mop. Holds a lot of water. That's what's so wonderful about squirrel mops. And the squirrel mop is what Edward Wesson used. He was famous for his squirrel mop, which I do use. But I do use other sort of sable brushes as well for later on. Going to come back to the mountains now. This has had a bit of time for it to dry. And the light's changed, so I don't know whether you can see in the distance there. You can see the big mountain in shadow now, which is how I thought it would look quite nice. So I'm going to try and introduce that dramatic shadow from the clouds on the mountain, just to give it that little bit of drama. Okay, so ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, maybe a little bit of burnt umber. I'm going to try and get these a little bit more dramatic. Trying to use the underpainting as well at times. Really trying to attack that. And then it goes a little bit towards the brown at the base of the mountain. So I've changed over to my sable brush now, which I'll probably keep on for the rest of the painting. Okay. Time for the other mountain now, and it's got shadows and light in it, so I'm going to try and depict it in that way, so it sort of comes in bands, so something like that, so it has the light moving across it. So leave it like that, I think. It's got a ridge. Okay, time to start the hill now. So there are sort of bands of colour going across it, so it's lighter and darker, lighter. I think it's where it's catching the grass in the light. So lots of different colours in it. So very bright. It's in full light, so the grass is maximum green, and it's a particularly green grass. I read on the sign there that this area is particularly green because underneath it's limestone, so it gives a good degree of water retention, keeps the grass nice and healthy. Right, we're going to start putting some trees on now. Maybe change the brush to a smaller brush. So try and get some of the stems on. So, again, green, ultramarine, quite dark underneath all that. So, trying to use the side of the brush here because I don't know whether you can see that effect. They're trying to sort of get lots of different colours onto it. So I'm trying to get the different effects of foliage on. So you can imagine lots and lots of little leaves. So I don't want to paint all the leaves in. So I'm going to use the side of the brush a bit more just to give it a sense that there are lots of leaves there. Always trying to find shortcuts in painting. You don't really want to paint every fleck of detail. That's good. So you can see I've got all these little marks here are quite pretty. What you're really trying to do within painting is try and develop your aesthetics, to develop your eye for what looks nice and what doesn't look nice. I think that's one of the most important lessons in art to take, learning what looks good and what doesn't look good. Just if you think it looks good doesn't mean it does look good. So you're trying to develop your true aesthetics, what really looks nice. Okay, there's a little fence down in the bottom left-hand corner. So going into it, and then it turns the corner and goes up the hill. Just a few posts. Yep, so the posts are going to be quite an important element of this composition, so that's what's going to lead your eye into the scene. So the posts are going to now go across to the right, up the hill. So do them in a pure colour. I'm turning the colour to blue now. Up the hill to another gate here. And then going up the hill again, zigzagging its way up. And then they carry on into the distance. This one's over here. So I think with compositionals, if you can get lines leading yourself into the distance, I think that helps. Okay, more fence posts. So I'm going to use cobalt blue for the fence posts. Lead them into the distance. And then some on the very top of the hill, silhouetted in the sky. And again going down the hill. So I'm doing the shady side of it, so at the end of it I'll add a highlight to these posts with white paint. I can really feel the weather coming in now, so it feels like it's going to rain. So we might be up against time. It really does feel like it's going to rain any second. Okay, now there's a electricity line right in the middle. So I've been debating. I mean, you can see it there. I've been debating whether to put it in or not, but I quite like it. I think it's a nice accent. So I'm going to put it. I am going to put it in. So it's quite straight up. And at the top there's and then the little power box of it. There's another one down here as well, which I'll place in too. I'm going to put some lighter areas to the trees now, so I'm going to use a little bit of white paint just to paint the highlights of these trees, so just to bring the tops out a bit more. See that? Makes it a little bit more interesting. Okay. Especially the ones against the mountains. A bit more, some darker ones as well. We've had a little bit of a rain shower, so we've jumped inside and now we've come back out again. It seems to be okay, so could start up any second now. So we'll try and get it done as quickly as we can. So try a bit more of the base of the trees. There's a silvery base to the bark, trunks of the trees. So we're just going to try and add that to it. Yeah, right. And also the rocks themselves, they have a silveriness to them as well. So the little rocks in the fields, so these, try and create a highlight on those. Okay, we're going to get the wooden fence posts. Now these wooden fence posts has been bleached and they've been in the winter, so they have a silveriness to them. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue, brown, and try and get the highlights in. So you've got the light side and the dark side of the trees, of the posts going. So that's just a hint at it, really. Lots of different colours. And work your way up. Going to coming across to my favourite part now, which is painting the white houses in. Really pretty one, this one. So that's the underpainting of it, so I'm going to paint over that as simply as I can. Nice little white part of the chimney. Let's get a good bit of white paint on there. We're getting there now, just the last few touches to go. Now there are lots of sheep in the field, so we're going to try and capture a few of them. So we'll start off with a sort of mid-tone of it. So a sort of yellowy colour, aren't they, really? And just to give it the idea. got some down here. It's a question of just hinting at them without going into too much detail. Okay, now to add a little bit of white, give it a little bit of that fluffiness. So hopefully that will depict it, make it look. I think some of these sheep need a really good chiropractor. They're in a bad way. Some of them got broken backs. What's wrong with them? Sheep-like? Yeah, sheep-like. So something coming towards you, but it's just hinting at them really. But you'd have to let me know what you think. They're rubbish, James. There we go. Again, so they're basically a ball of fluff. So I'm going to have the light coming from the left, and then falling off. That's the painting pretty much done now, and the last thing to do really is just to connect things with a bit of pencil. So we have the wire, for example, of the fence posts coming into it, and I'd rather depict that as a pencil mark. It's quite a lot finer than any brush I could have going into the distance there, and a few marks of the trees. Just a little drawing effect really. The river coming in maybe. Just trying to delineate the mountains. A bit rounded effect of that. Incredible Suilven mountain there. That's the painting finished. Pretty pleased with it. It's just coming to sign it now. Bottom right. James Potter. Which is again on Fabriano. Okay, here's the finished picture. I'm pleased with it. I like it. Done in about 2 hours or so. So yeah, it was a good result for that. Quite big. This is 24 inches by 18 inches. Again on Fabriano Artistico, not paper. Hope you all enjoyed that little demonstration of watercolour painting, and that it's inspired you to get out and paint and to see the world really, and in a different light away from the studio. So don't forget to follow me if you can, and subscribe, and maybe make a comment if you can. I always like to hear what people think about painting, and hopefully I can help you as much as I can, and look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thanks very much.